Picture this moment with me. You wake up in complete darkness. The air inside your shelter feels thick and stale. But the moment you push aside the heavy animal hide covering the entrance, the cold hits you like a physical blow. Your lungs burn, your eyes water instantly, and before you can take a second breath, ice crystals are already forming in your beard. This is not a normal winter morning. This is 20,000 years ago, the peak of the last ice age, and you're about to do something that sounds completely insane. You're going to walk for weeks, maybe months, cross a landscape so deadly that even polar bears would think twice. No jacket from a store, no GPS, no rescue helicopter waiting if things go wrong, just you, your family, and a frozen world that stretches farther than you can imagine. Here is what makes this absolutely wild. Our ancestors did not just do this once, they did it over and over again. They crossed entire continents. They discovered new lands. They survived in temperatures that would kill most modern humans in a single night. So how did they possibly do it? Before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. So hit that subscribe button right now. Seriously, it helps this channel more than you know. And drop a comment telling me where you are listening from. Last week, someone said they were watching from Norway while a blizzard raged outside. That is absolutely perfect for this topic. Now let us step back in time together. The Pleistocene epoch. That is the fancy scientific name for the Ice Age. It started about 2.5 million years ago. It ended just over 11,000 years ago. During that massive stretch of time, Earth went through brutal cycles. Freezing, thawing, freezing again. Giant sheets of ice grew across North America, Europe and Asia. At the coldest point, about 20,000 years ago, almost 1/3 of Earth's land surface was buried under ice. Some of that ice was miles thick. This was the world of early humans. But here is something important. The word caveman is actually misleading. Yes, it is catchy. Yes, we all picture someone hiding in a dark cave. But most Ice Age humans did not live in caves full time. Many were nomadic. That means they moved constantly, following herds of mammoth, chasing bison and reindeer across enormous distances. Caves were just convenient shelters when they happened to find them, like rest stops on an endless highway. The key to their survival was not one single miracle invention. It was a combination: intelligence, community, and an evolving relationship with the environment that was honestly genius. Let me paint you a picture of what travelling through Ice Age Europe actually looked like. Imagine a small group, maybe 15 people, men, women, children. They are standing at the edge of a valley covered in snow. The wind is howling. The temperature is 30 degrees below zero, maybe colder with the wind chill. They're wearing layers of fur. Their faces are wrapped in hide to protect against frostbite. Each person carries a pack made from animal skin. Inside are tools, dried meat, fire-starting materials. One person points toward a distant ridge. Beyond that ridge is a valley where they know reindeer gather. Food, survival. But getting there means 3 days of walking through waist-deep snow. They look at each other. No words needed. They have done this before. Their parents did this. Their grandparents did this. They start walking. This was not a casual hike. This was a tactical operation. Every step required planning, knowledge, teamwork, and the absolutely wild part, they succeeded over and over again for thousands of years. Want to know their secrets? Keep listening. Because what they figured out is going to blow your mind. The first secret was clothing, and it was way more advanced than you think. Chapter 2, The Secret Weapon, Fire and Fur. Let us talk about what Ice Age humans actually wore, because this is where things get really interesting. Archaeologists have found bone needles dating back almost 40,000 years. Think about that, 40,000 years ago. Long before metal existed, long before farming, These people were sewing. They were not just wrapping themselves in animal skins like a blanket. They were creating tailored clothing, custom fit, layered, designed for extreme cold. Here is how it worked. The inner layer was soft leather, usually from reindeer or young mammoth. This layer sat against the skin, stayed dry. It trapped body heat. Over that came heavier furs. Wolf, bear, even wolverine. These provided serious insulation. The outermost layer was thicker hide, sometimes waterproofed with animal fat. This blocked wind and moisture. The enemy of warmth, they even lined their boots with dried grasses. This created air pockets. Trapped warm air is one of the best insulators in nature. Sound familiar? It should. Arctic peoples today use almost the same system. But here is the challenge. Warmth was just part of the equation. These people also needed to move, to hunt, to run if predators showed up. You cannot do that if you are bundled up like a walking furball, so they created something brilliant. Adjustable clothing. Evidence from frozen sites in Siberia shows they made parkas and leggings that could be tightened or loosened depending on weather and activity. Primitive? Maybe. Effective? Absolutely. They used belts and cords made from sinew, animal tendons, incredibly strong. They could cinch their clothing tight when the wind picked up, loosen it when they were working hard and generating body heat. This is engineering, plain and simple. Now let us talk about their second secret weapon, the one that changed everything. Fire. I know what you're thinking, obviously fire. Everyone knows about fire, but you do not understand. Fire was not just for warmth, it was technology, protection, social glue, everything. Early humans had mastered fire long before the peak of the Ice Age, maybe over 500,000 years earlier. But during the coldest periods, fire became absolutely essential. Imagine this scene. You've been walking for 6 hours through blinding snow. Your hands are numb, even inside fur mittens. Your face feels like stone. Every breath hurts. Then you reach the spot your group planned to camp. Someone clears snow from the ground. Others gather dry wood they carried. One person pulls out the fire kit, a piece of flint, a chunk of iron pyrite, dry moss for tinder. Strike, spark, smoke, then flame. You would feel it before you saw it. The glow reflecting in everyone's eyes, the smell of burning wood, the sudden crackle as the flame took hold. That moment, that was life returning. Fire was not just heat, it was hope, it was safety, it was proof that humans could create warmth in a frozen world, and they carried it with them. This is one of the most incredible discoveries. Evidence from places like Cavemen Cave in Israel suggests early humans knew how to maintain embers over time. They would transport fire in bark containers, or dried animal dung, anything that could hold a coal without catching flame. Think about that level of planning, keeping a tiny pocket of warmth alive through days of travel. So you did not have to start from scratch every single night. That is not primitive. That is sophisticated survival strategy. They also built special fire pits, lined with stones. The stones would heat up and radiate warmth long after the flames died down. Inside their shelters, these fire pits could keep a space survivable through the night. But fire did more than provide warmth. It processed food. It hardened wooden spear tips. It kept predators away. At night, the glow of fire marked safe spaces in an endless darkness. Some archaeologists believe groups would leave fires burning at key locations, landmarks, signals to other travelers. You could navigate by following distant glows across the frozen landscape. Fire was their streetlights, their stove, their protection system, all in one. and when combined with their fur clothing, they had a complete survival system. But clothing and fire still were not enough, because you cannot walk forever. Eventually you need shelter, and caves were not always available. So what did they do when there was no cave? How did they create shelter in the middle of a frozen wasteland? That is where things get truly mind-blowing. Stay with me. Chapter 3. Building homes in a frozen hell. When people think Ice Age, they automatically picture cave dwellers. Everyone huddled in dark, rocky spaces. But here is the truth. Caves were not always safe. Sometimes bears claimed them first. Sometimes lions. Sometimes the caves were in the wrong location. Too far from water. Too far from hunting grounds. So Ice Age travelers did something remarkable. They built their own shelters, portable ones, using materials nature provided. One of the most extraordinary examples comes from Ukraine. Archaeologists discovered entire structures made from mammoth bones. Let that sink in. Houses built from the skeletons of giant extinct elephants. Picture it. The curved ribs of a mammoth forming the frame of a dome. Tusks used as support beams. Massive skulls as foundation stones. Animal hides stretched across the outside like canvas. These were not flimsy tents. These were sturdy structures strong enough to last through brutal winters. Some of them housed multiple families. Inside, they built fires in stone-lined pits. The mammoth bone walls provided surprisingly good insulation. The hides blocked wind, and the whole structure could last for years if maintained. These were not just shelters, they were home bases, command centers for journeys that could span entire seasons. But what if you were traveling and could not build something that permanent? What if you needed shelter fast? They had solutions for that too. Lightweight portable shelters. Think of them as the world's first tents. They used flexible wooden poles, usually willow or birch. These bent into arches. Then they draped hides over the frame, secured everything with stones and rope made from sinew. The whole thing could be assembled in under an hour, taken down even faster, and the materials could be carried on their backs. Inside these temporary shelters, the design was surprisingly smart. A small fire pit in the center, a smoke hole at the top, sleeping areas arranged in a circle around the fire. Everyone benefited from the warmth. They even used snow as insulation. Sounds crazy, right? But snow is actually an excellent insulator when used correctly. They would build low walls of packed snow around the outside of their shelters, or pile snow against the hide walls. This created a buffer against wind. Some temporary camps show circular walls made from snow blocks, primitive windbreaks that kept sleeping areas protected from brutal gales. The Inuit people still use this principle today with igloos. Same physics, same understanding of how snow can trap heat. But here is what really blows my mind. These Ice Age builders understood something modern people often forget. Smaller spaces are easier to heat. Their shelters were low, compact, just big enough for people to sit or lie down. This meant body heat alone could raise the temperature inside by 10 or 15 degrees. Combined with a small fire, you could create a survivable space even when the outside temperature was deadly. They also positioned entrances carefully, usually facing away from prevailing winds. Sometimes they built double entrance tunnels, a curved passage that blocked direct wind but allowed people to come and go. This is architectural thinking, thousands of years before written language. And they did not just build these shelters randomly. They returned to the same spots season after season. Good camping locations became known, passed down through oral tradition. A spot near a river with cliffs for wind protection, a valley where wood was plentiful, a ridge that caught early morning sun. These places became part of their mental maps. Speaking of mental maps, that brings us to one of the most fascinating questions. How did they navigate? How did they find their way across landscapes that all looked the same? No roads, no signs, no compasses, just endless frozen terrain. So how did they not get hopelessly lost? The answer is going to surprise you, and it is coming up next. But first, if you are enjoying this deep dive into ancient survival, do me a favour, hit that like button. It tells YouTube to share this video with more people who love this stuff. And seriously, drop a comment. Tell me what surprises you most so far. I read every single one. Alright, let us talk about the Ice Age GPS system, because what they figured out is absolutely brilliant. Chapter 4, The Mental Map, How They Navigated Without GPS. Close your eyes for a second. Imagine you are standing in the middle of a frozen plain. Snow stretches in every direction. No trees, no landmarks, no mountains, just white. Which way do you walk? This was a real problem Ice Age travellers faced constantly. One wrong turn could mean death. Walking in circles wastes energy, burns through food supplies, leaves you stranded. So how did they navigate? First, the stars. The same constellations we see today guided them. The North Star has been in roughly the same position for thousands of years. Point toward it and you are going north. Simple but effective, but they went way deeper than that. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer societies have learned that indigenous people can memorize incredibly complex star patterns. Not just major constellations, but the positions of hundreds of individual stars, how they move through the seasons. Ice Age humans almost certainly had the same knowledge. They could tell direction by looking up. They could tell time of year. They could predict when seasons would change by watching which stars appeared on the horizon. The stars were their calendar and compass combined. But what about during the day? Or when clouds covered the sky? They used the sun. Obviously, it rises in the east, sets in the west. But they also understood how the sun's path changes through the year. In winter, it stays low in the southern sky. In summer, it arcs higher. By watching shadows and the angle of sunlight, they could maintain direction even without seeing the actual sun through clouds. They also read the landscape in ways we have completely lost. Wind patterns, ice formations, snowdrifts, all of these things gave them information. For example, wind in many Ice Age regions came predominantly from the north or northwest. Snow would pile up on the south side of rocks and hills. Ice would form in specific patterns. By reading these clues, they could figure out direction. They used landmarks obsessively. A distinctive cliff, a lone boulder, a curved section of river. These became memory anchors, and they passed this knowledge down through stories. Imagine sitting around a fire. An elder is teaching the young people about a route they will travel next season. He does not have a map to show them. Instead, he tells a story. Walk 3 days toward the rising sun. You will reach a valley where a black rock stands alone. Turn toward the cold wind. Follow the frozen river until you see twin peaks shaped like mammoth tusks. Camp there. Good hunting beyond. That is not just a story. That is a navigational instruction encoded in memory. The next generation will repeat that same story and the next, and the next. For thousands of years, these oral maps guided people across continents. Modern researchers studying Aboriginal Australians have found songlines, routes encoded in songs that stretch for hundreds of kilometres. The lyrics describe landmarks, water sources, and directions. You could literally sing your way across the desert. Ice Age Europeans and Asians almost certainly used similar systems. Songs, stories, chants, all carrying geographic information. But they also used something even more remarkable: kinetic memory. Body memory, the feel of a route. When you walk the same path multiple times, your body starts to remember it. The rhythm of steps, how long a section takes, when terrain gets steep or flat. Modern hikers call this trail sense. Ice Age travelers developed this to an extraordinary degree. They could retrace routes in darkness, in blizzards, because their bodies remembered. And they traveled in groups for a reason. Multiple people meant multiple memories. If one person got confused, others could correct. Collective navigation. They also left physical markers, stacked stones called cairns, carved symbols on rocks, broken branches arranged in patterns. These were trail signs, messages to themselves and others. Some cave art from this period might actually be maps. There are paintings that show patterns of dots, lines, and animal figures. For decades, archaeologists thought these were purely symbolic or religious. Now some believe they represent migration routes, hunting grounds, seasonal markers. Imagine that. The world's first maps might be painted on cave walls, hidden in plain sight for 20,000 years. But even with all these navigation tricks, travel was still incredibly risky. One major threat they could not always predict or avoid: running out of food. Because here is the brutal truth. The Ice Age world was beautiful but harsh. Food was scarce, spread out, unpredictable, and the animals they depended on most were about to disappear. What happened next changed everything, and it is coming up. But before we go there, take a second and share this video with someone who would find it fascinating. Send it to a friend who loves history, or survival, or just cool stories about the past. Alright, let us talk about the food crisis that almost ended the human journey. Chapter 5: The Food Crisis. When Giants Disappeared. Here is something that does not get talked about enough. For most of the Ice Age, humans had it relatively good, food-wise at least. Yes, the world was frozen. Yes, temperatures were brutal, but the steppes and tundras were filled with massive herds: mammoth, woolly rhinoceros, giant bison, megaloceros giant deer, horses, reindeer. These animals were walking resource packages. A single mammoth could provide thousands of pounds of meat, enough fat to last months. Bones for tools and shelter, hide for clothing and shelter, sinew for rope and thread. Ice Age humans built their entire lifestyle around these megafauna. They followed the herds, they knew migration patterns, they developed sophisticated hunting techniques, but then something happened. Around 15,000 years ago, the climate began to shift. The Ice Age was ending, temperatures rose, glaciers melted, and the landscape transformed. Grasslands turned into forests, open tundra disappeared, and the giant animals that thrived in cold climates started to struggle. Over the next several thousand years, most Ice Age megafauna went extinct. Mammoth, woolly rhinos, giant deer, cave lions, cave bears, gone. There is still debate about why. Climate change played a role, but hunting pressure from humans probably contributed too. Either way, the result was catastrophic for human populations that depended on these animals. Imagine your entire food supply vanishing. Not all at once, but slowly, year by year, herds getting smaller, harder to find. What do? This was an existential crisis, and it forced Ice Age humans to adapt in completely new ways. They shifted their hunting strategies, focused on smaller, faster animals, deer, boar, rabbits. This required different tools, different techniques. They invented the bow and arrow around this time. Lighter, more accurate than spears, perfect for forest hunting. They also turned to the water. Rivers, lakes, coasts. They became skilled fishermen, developed hooks carved from bone, nets woven from plant fibers, fish traps. Suddenly salmon runs became as important as mammoth herds had been. They gathered more plants, nuts, berries, roots, mushrooms, things their ancestors might have ignored when meat was plentiful. Now these became essential parts of their diet. This diversification saved them. Instead of relying on one food source, they learned to exploit everything the environment offered. But diversification meant something else too. It meant traveling differently. Mammoth herds moved in predictable patterns. You could follow them, plan around them, but fish, plants, small game? These resources were scattered, localized, so groups started staying in areas longer, building semi-permanent camps near reliable resources, rivers with fish, forests with deer, coastlines with shellfish. This was the beginning of a huge transition, from fully nomadic hunter-gatherers to semi-sedentary ones. People still travelled, but their movements became more seasonal, more cyclical, less about constant wandering and more about moving between known resource sites. And this is where it gets really interesting, because some groups started to experiment with something revolutionary. They started to notice patterns. Certain plants grew where fires had cleared ground. Seeds dropped by accident would sprout next year. Wild grain could be encouraged to grow in specific areas. This was not agriculture yet, not true farming, but it was the spark, the beginning of an idea that would eventually change everything. Some researchers believe the end of the Ice Age and the extinction of megafauna were the triggers that led to the agricultural revolution. When the easy food source disappeared, humans had to innovate, and that innovation eventually led to farming, to villages, to civilization. But that took thousands of years. In the meantime, Ice Age descendants were still travelling, still moving, still exploring, and some of them made journeys that are almost unbelievable. Because during the Ice Age, sea levels were much lower, water was locked up in glaciers, and that exposed land that is underwater today, including a massive land bridge between Siberia and Alaska, the Bering Land Bridge, and across that bridge, humans walked into a completely new world. The Americas, two entire continents that had never known human footsteps, and the people who crossed into that new world, they were the ultimate Ice Age travellers. Coming up next, we're going to follow them on one of the most epic journeys in human history, a migration that would eventually reach all the way from the Arctic to the southern tip of South America. But before we go there, I need to ask you something. Are you still awake? Because if you have listened this far, you are clearly someone who appreciates deep dives into history. So subscribe. Seriously, hit that button. I make videos like this all the time, and your subscription helps more than you know. Alright, let us cross the Bering Land Bridge and discover the Americas. Chapter 6. The Great Migration, Crossing Continents on Foot. Around 20,000 years ago, a small group of humans stood at the edge of what we now call Siberia. They were hunters, following herds of mammoth and bison across the frozen steppes. But these herds were moving east, into territory no human had ever explored. And because sea levels were so low, there was land. A massive bridge of tundra connecting Asia to North America, the Bering Land Bridge. Scientists call it Beringia. At its widest, it stretched over 1,000 kilometers. It was not a narrow strip. It was an entire subcontinent. Cold, flat, covered in grass and low shrubs, and the herds walked across it, followed by the humans who hunted them. We do not know their names, we do not know what they called themselves. But genetic evidence tells us they were the ancestors of all Native American peoples. Every indigenous group from Alaska to Argentina descended from these Ice Age travelers. Think about the courage that took. Walking into a completely unknown world, no knowledge of what lay ahead, no stories from previous travelers, just faith that if animals could survive there, humans could too. They crossed Beringia over generations, not a single journey but a slow expansion. Families following herds, setting up camps, having children, those children moving a bit farther east. Eventually they reached Alaska, and from there they spread, south along the Pacific coast, through ice-free corridors between glaciers, into the heart of North America. Within a few thousand years, humans had reached the tip of South America. That is over 20,000 kilometers, traveled on foot, through every climate imaginable, frozen tundra, dense forests, deserts, mountains. This was arguably the greatest migration in human history, and it happened because of skills developed during the Ice Age. Navigation, adaptation, community, fire, tool-making. The people who reached South America were still using the same survival strategies their ancestors had used in Ice Age Europe, but they adapted those strategies to new environments. In the forests of North America, they learned to use canoes, hollowed out logs for travelling rivers. This opened up entirely new routes, faster, more efficient than walking. On the coasts, they became expert fishermen, developed techniques for hunting seals, gathering shellfish. Some groups became almost entirely maritime, travelling by boat, following whale migrations. In the deserts of the American Southwest, they learned water management, how to find hidden springs, how to carry and store water, how to travel at night when temperatures were cooler. Every environment demanded new adaptations, but the core skills remained the same: observe, learn, share, survive, and as they spread, they left traces. Archaeological sites, stone tools, cave paintings, footprints preserved in mud that hardened over thousands of years. In White Sands, New Mexico, archaeologists found footprints of adults and children, dating to over 20,000 years ago. You can see the impressions of toes, the stride patterns. These people were walking quickly, purposefully. Looking at those footprints, you realize something profound. These were real people, not mythical heroes. Just families trying to survive, walking through a landscape we can barely imagine. And they did more than survive, they thrived. By the time Europeans arrived in the Americas 1,500 years ago, there were millions of indigenous people, hundreds of distinct cultures, languages, technologies, all of it traced back to those first Ice Age migrants who crossed Beringia. But while humans were spreading through the Americas, the world they left behind was changing. Back in Europe and Asia, the Ice Age was ending. Glaciers were retreating, forests were returning, and human societies were transforming. The great megafauna were disappearing. Mammoths, woolly rhinos, gone. But in their place, new opportunities appeared. Rivers full of salmon, forests full of deer, coastlines teeming with shellfish, and the people adapted, again, because that's what humans do. Travel started to look different. Less about constant movement, more about seasonal migration, moving between known resource sites, summer fishing camps, winter hunting grounds, spring gathering areas. Some groups began building permanent or semi-permanent villages, circular clusters of huts surrounded by cleared areas. This was the beginning of settled life. But even in these early villages, the travelling instinct remained. People still explored, still traded, still told stories about faraway places. And that brings us to another fascinating question. How did these groups maintain connections across vast distances? How did ideas spread? How did technologies travel? The answer lies in something unexpected: trade networks. And they were way more sophisticated than you might think. That's coming up next. But first, take a second and hit that like button if you are enjoying this journey through time. And if you have questions or thoughts, drop them in the comments. I love reading your reactions. Alright, let us talk about the world's first trade networks, because what connected Ice Age descendants was more than just survival. It was curiosity. Chapter 7. The Mystery of the First Explorers. Here is a question that kept archaeologists puzzled for decades. How do you explain finding seashells from the Mediterranean in Central Europe, hundreds of kilometers from the nearest coast? Or obsidian volcanic glass from modern-day Turkey showing up in caves in France? Or amber from the Baltic appearing in burial sites in Italy? These materials did not teleport. Someone carried them, but why and how? The answer reveals something beautiful about Ice Age humans. They were not just surviving, they were connecting, trading, building relationships across vast distances. Let me explain how it worked. Imagine you are part of a small band living near a river in what is now Germany. Your territory spans maybe 50 kilometers. You know every hunting spot, every good camping site, every place to find flint for tools. But once or twice a year, you travel to a special meeting place, a valley where several groups gather, maybe 200 people total, from different regions. This gathering is part festival, part market, part social event. People trade goods, exchange tools, share stories. And young people from different groups meet, fall in love, form new families. When you return home, you bring back more than goods. You bring news, techniques, ideas, maybe a new way to sharpen a spear point, or a story about a cave 3 valleys over where the walls are covered in red ochre paintings. These gatherings happened regularly, passed down through generations, and they created networks, threads of connection linking groups across entire regions. Materials travelled along these networks. Shell beads might change hands 5 or 6 times, passing from group to group, each exchange building relationships, creating alliances. Why trade shells? They were not useful, you could not eat them, could not make tools from them. But that is exactly why they were valuable. They were rare, beautiful, exotic. Wearing a shell from the coast announced that you were connected, that you had trading partners, that you were part of something larger than your immediate group. This was social technology, and it was powerful. Archaeologists call these items prestige goods. Objects valued not for utility but for meaning, status symbols, gifts, heirlooms, but practical goods travelled too. High-quality flint was prized. Some regions had excellent stone, others did not, so flint was traded across hundreds of kilometres. Ochre pigments, used for body paint and cave art. Some areas had rich red ochre deposits. These became trade hubs. Even food was traded. Dried meat, salt, smoked fish, nuts. Groups specialised in what their environment provided, then exchanged surplus with others. This created interdependence. Your group might excel at fishing, another at hunting, a third at gathering medicinal plants. By trading, everyone benefited, and the trade routes themselves became important. Known paths, safe routes, marked by cairns and symbols. Some of these routes were used for thousands of years, generation after generation following the same trails. In a way, these were the first highways, invisible to us now, but well known to the people who travelled them. But trade was not the only reason to travel. Some journeys were driven by something more mysterious. Belief. Certain caves became sacred sites, places where shamans painted spirits and animals on the walls. People would travel for days to visit these caves, to participate in rituals, to connect with the supernatural. We know this because of the footprints. In caves like Lascaux and Chauvet, archaeologists have found layer upon layer of footprints, differences, different ages, and thousands of years. People kept returning. These were pilgrimage sites, sacred geography. Some researchers believe the cave paintings themselves were maps, or stories, or lessons encoded in images, the handprints, the animals, the abstract symbols, all carrying meaning we are only beginning to understand. What if these caves were schools, places where knowledge was transmitted, where young people learned about migration routes, hunting techniques, and spiritual beliefs? That would explain why groups travelled so far to visit them. Knowledge was worth the journey, and as groups moved and mixed, languages spread. DNA evidence shows waves of migration across Europe and Asia, different populations meeting, mixing, creating new hybrid cultures. This was not always peaceful. Some evidence suggests conflict, competition for territory and resources, but cooperation was more common because isolated groups were vulnerable, connected groups were stronger. This principle still holds today. Connection equals survival, isolation equals risk. By the end of the Ice Age, humans had spread across almost the entire planet. Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia, the Americas, everywhere except Antarctica. And everywhere they went, they adapted, created new cultures, new languages, new technologies, but all built on the same foundation. The skills learned during the Ice Age: navigation, fire, tools, clothing, shelter, community. The Ice Age forged us, made us tough, creative, cooperative. And when the ice finally retreated, we did not stop moving. We kept exploring, kept innovating. That restlessness is still in us. The urge to see what is over the next hill, to explore, to connect, which brings us to something profound. The Ice Age did not just teach us to survive cold, it taught us to be human. Coming up in the final chapters, we are going to explore that legacy, how Ice Age lessons shaped civilization, why we still carry those instincts, and what it all means for our future. But first, do me a favour. If this video has made you think differently about our ancestors, share it. Post it on your social media, send it to a friend. Help more people discover these incredible stories. Alright, let us talk about what happened when the ice finally melted, and why that moment might be more important than you realise. Chapter 8. When Ice Met Innovation. Picture the world 13,000 years ago, the long freezes ending, slowly, year by year. The glaciers are retreating, rivers of meltwater carve new valleys, lakes form where ice once sat. For the first time in thousands of years, the land is opening up. Forests are spreading, animals are migrating to new territories, and humans are following, still moving, still adapting. But something fundamental is changing. The constant pressure of survival is easing, not gone, but reduced. And that creates space to think, to experiment, to innovate in ways that were impossible before. Let me explain. During the harshest periods of the Ice Age, every moment was focused on immediate survival. Find food, stay warm, keep moving. There was little time for anything else, but as the climate warmed, resources became more predictable. Rivers flooded at the same time each year. Salmon runs, nut harvests, berry seasons. This predictability allowed planning, long-term thinking, and that is when innovation exploded. Groups began building more permanent structures, not just shelters for a few days, but houses that could last years. Entire villages appeared near rivers and coastlines. They developed better fishing technology. Nets, weirs, traps, hooks carved with incredible precision. Fishing went from opportunistic to systematic. They domesticated dogs fully. Selective breeding created animals better suited for hunting, herding, and companionship. Dogs became partners in a way they had not been before. They invented pottery, clay vessels for cooking and storage. This changed everything. Now you could store food long term, save surplus. plan for lean seasons, and then came the big one, agriculture. Around 11,000 years ago, groups in the Fertile Crescent, modern-day Iraq, Syria, Turkey, began deliberately planting seeds. Wheat, barley, lentils. This was not an accident. This was observation and experimentation spanning generations. Someone noticed that seeds dropped near camps sprouted next year. That observation turned into an experiment. What if we planted seeds on purpose? Early farming was not easier than hunting and gathering. In fact, it was harder. More work, but it produced more food in less space, and that meant more people could live together. Villages grew into towns, towns into cities, and suddenly the whole human story pivoted. But here is what is wild. Agriculture did not replace the Ice Age survival skills. It built on them. Farmers still tracked seasons using the stars, still built shelters using techniques refined over millennia, still relied on community cooperation, still used fire as their primary technology. The tools were the same: flint blades, bone needles, fire drills, just applied to new purposes, and people did not stop moving. Early farmers were still semi-nomadic. They would plant crops, then move to hunting grounds while the crops grew, return for harvest, then move again. It took thousands of years before anyone stayed in one place year-round. The travelling instinct was that deeply ingrained. Even as civilizations rose, the connection to Ice Age ancestors remained clear. The first cities in Mesopotamia built walls using the same principles as mammoth bone huts: insulation, windbreaks, defense. The first written languages encoded stories that had been told orally for thousands of years. Flood myths, hero journeys, tales of gods and monsters. Many of these stories probably originated during the Ice Age, the great Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest written stories. Features a flood that drowns the world. Sound familiar? This might be cultural memory of the massive floods that occurred when glaciers melted. Real events turned into myth. So even in civilization, the Ice Age lived on, in stories, in technologies, in instincts, which raises a fascinating question. What would Ice Age travelers think if they could see us today? On one hand, we have accomplished things that would seem like magic to them. Machines, cities, the ability to communicate instantly across the world. But on the other hand, we have lost things they took for granted. The ability to navigate by stars, to build shelter from scratch, to survive without supply chains and infrastructure. We are simultaneously more capable and more fragile, more connected and more isolated. And here is the controversial thought. Have we evolved beyond what the Ice Age taught us? Or are we still fundamentally the same people, just dressed in different clothes? I think the answer is both. We have built incredible things, but our brains, our instincts, those were forged in the cold, and they have not changed nearly as much as our technology. That is why certain things still resonate with us. Sitting around a fire feels right. Exploring new places feels necessary. Working together toward a common goal feels meaningful. These are Ice Age instincts, still alive, still guiding us, even when we do not realize it. And that brings us to something important, something I want you to think about as we near the end of this journey. What can we learn from Ice Age travelers? What lessons do they offer for our modern world? That is coming up in the next chapter. But first, if you have made it this far, I want to say thank you. This has been a long journey, and the fact that you are still here means you appreciate depth, nuance, real exploration of ideas. So subscribe, join this community. We dive deep into history, science, and the human story. And I promise there is so much more to explore. All right, let us talk about what Ice Age ancestors can teach us, right here, right now, in the modern world. Chapter 9, The Lost Routes of Ancient Highways. Imagine for a moment standing at the edge of a modern highway. Cars rushing past, trucks hauling goods across continents, the pavement stretching to the horizon. Now imagine that same landscape 20,000 years ago. No road, just frozen tundra. But humans walking, following the same route, for the same reason: to connect, to trade, to survive. That is the fascinating truth about human travel. The routes have not changed nearly as much as the methods. Many modern roads follow ancient trails. Ancient trails followed animal paths, and animal paths followed the easiest terrain. Valleys, mountain passes, river crossings. These natural corridors have guided movement for millions of years. First animals, then humans, then eventually cars and trains. In Europe, some highways follow routes that were established during the Ice Age. Paths that connected resource-rich areas. Trade routes that linked tribes and territories. The famous Amber Road, a trade route that brought amber from the Baltic Sea to the Mediterranean. Archaeological evidence suggests versions of this route existed for over 15,000 years. Long before Rome, long before writing, Silk Road, connecting China to the Mediterranean. The eastern sections followed paths established by Ice Age hunters moving through Central Asia. Even in the Americas, indigenous trade networks followed routes established by the first migrants. Trails that crossed mountains, followed rivers, connected coasts. These were not random. They were optimized over generations, trial and error, memory and refinement. The people who first walked these routes were pathfinders, explorers who risked everything to discover new territories. And once a safe route was found, it was preserved, passed down, used again and again. That is legacy. Footsteps that lasted 10,000 years, but physical routes were not the only legacy. Ice Age travelers also created conceptual routes, ways of thinking, approaches to problems that we still use today. For example, the scientific method: observe, hypothesize, test, learn. That is exactly how Ice Age humans developed their survival strategies. They observed animal behavior, tested different tools, learned from failures, shared successes. They were scientists before science existed, experimenters, innovators. Or consider the idea of community. Modern society is built on cooperation, division of labour, specialisation. These concepts were developed during the Ice Age, when survival depended on everyone contributing their skills. Hunters, gatherers, toolmakers, firekeepers, storytellers. Everyone had a role, everyone mattered. That is the foundation of every functional society since. Even our sense of time is an Ice Age inheritance. The cycle of seasons, the rhythm of day and night, the phases of the moon. These became our first calendars, our first clocks. We still organise our lives around these cycles. School years, work schedules, holidays, all echoes of seasonal patterns established thousands of years ago. But here is where it gets controversial. Some people argue that modern life has disconnected us from these ancient rhythms, that we have lost something important. They say we no longer know the stars, can no longer build shelter without stores, cannot survive without technology, and that is partly true. Most modern people could not survive a single night in Ice Age conditions. We have become dependent, specialised, fragile in ways our ancestors were not. But is that a problem? Or is that progress? After all, specialization is what allows civilization to exist. I do not need to know how to hunt, because farmers provide food. I do not need to build shelter, because architects and engineers do that. I can focus on one thing, get really good at it, contribute that way. That is efficiency. It is why we have medicine, space travel, art, philosophy. None of that would be possible if everyone still spent all day hunting and gathering. So maybe we have not lost those Ice Age skills, maybe we have just redirected that same innovative spirit toward different challenges. But here is the thing, deep down, in moments of crisis, those old instincts wake up. When disaster strikes, when the power goes out, when we face real danger, the Ice Age mind activates. We become resourceful, cooperative, focused. We remember how to survive. That is not something we learned. That is something we inherited, written into our DNA, carved into our nervous system by thousands of generations who faced the cold and won. And that brings us to a profound realization. We are not separate from our ancestors. We are a continuation, the same story, still unfolding. Every journey we take, every challenge we face, every moment we choose courage over fear. That is the Ice Age spirit, still alive. So what does this mean for us? Right now, in the modern world? It means we are tougher than we think, more adaptable, more capable, because we carry the legacy of people who crossed frozen continents with stone tools and determination. It means community still matters, connection, cooperation. These are not just nice ideas, they are survival strategies refined over millennia. It means curiosity is not a luxury, it is a necessity. The urge to explore, to learn, to push boundaries. That is what kept our ancestors alive, and it is what will carry us forward. That brings us to the final chapter, where we tie everything together and talk about what the Ice Age really means, not just for history, but for you, right now. But before we get there, I have one more request. If this video has given you a new perspective on our ancestors and yourself, give it a like. Leave a comment. Let me know what resonated, what surprised you, what you are going to remember. And share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who underestimates themselves. Someone who thinks ancient humans were primitive. Someone who needs a reminder that we come from survivors. Alright, let us bring this home. The final chapter. What does it all mean? Chapter 10. The truth about Ice Age community. Here is the ultimate truth about Ice Age survival. It was never about individuals, it was always about community. Think about it. Every story we have explored, every technique, every innovation, none of it works alone. Clothing, you need someone to hunt, someone to process hides, someone to sew, division of labour. Fire, someone gathers wood, someone starts it, someone keeps it alive through the night. Teamwork, navigation, elders teach the young. Everyone contributes observations, collective memory. Hunting, coordinated, planned, executed as a group. Solo hunters did not last long. The fundamental lesson of the Ice Age is this: together we survive, alone we perish. That is not poetry. That is physics. Humans are not the strongest animals, not the fastest, not the toughest. A polar bear can kill us easily. A wolf pack can chase us down. The cold itself can stop our hearts. But we have one advantage: cooperation, the ability to work together, to share knowledge, to care for each other. That is our superpower. And it was forged in the coldest, darkest periods of human history, when survival depended absolutely on connection. Let me give you a specific example. In Ice Age campsites, archaeologists find evidence of disabled individuals who survived for years. People with broken bones that healed, people with missing teeth, people who could not hunt, could not gather. How did they survive? Someone took care of them, fed them, protected them. That is not nature. In nature, the weak die. Predators do not show mercy. Harsh environments do not make exceptions, but humans do. We care for each other, even when it costs us, even when it is not efficient. That might be the most important thing the Ice Age taught us. Compassion is not a luxury, it is a survival strategy, because the person you save today might save you tomorrow. This is why Ice Age communities were small, usually 20 to 30 people. Everyone knew everyone. Everyone mattered. Losing one person weakened the whole group. Trust was not optional, it was essential. You trusted that the person watching for predators would stay alert, that the person tending fire would not let it die, that the hunter would share meat, that the gatherer would share plants. Break that trust, you get exiled. An exile meant death. So trust, cooperation, and empathy were not just moral values. They were survival requirements, and that shaped us deeply, genetically, neurologically. This is why betrayal hurts so much, why loneliness feels dangerous, why belonging feels like safety. These are ancient signals, evolved over thousands of generations. When you feared being part of a team, that is Ice Age wiring. When you crave connection during hard times, that is ancestral wisdom. Your nervous system remembers that isolation is deadly. Community is life. And here is where this gets really powerful. Modern society has changed a lot, but those needs have not. We still crave belonging. We still need to feel useful. We still want to contribute to something larger than ourselves. When those needs are not met, we suffer. Depression, anxiety, isolation. These are modern problems, but they have ancient roots. We are living in a world that our Ice Age brains were not designed for. Cities with millions of strangers, digital communication instead of face-to-face, individualism celebrated over community. No wonder so many people feel lost, disconnected. Our environment has changed faster than our biology can adapt. But here is the good news. We can learn from our ancestors. We can apply Ice Age wisdom to modern challenges, build small communities, friend groups, teams, neighborhoods, places where everyone knows everyone, where people matter. Prioritize face-to-face connection, sitting around actual fires, sharing meals, real presence, not just digital interaction. Develop skills, learn to make things, to fix things, to create things. That sense of competence and contribution is ancient, and it still matters. Spend time in nature, walk, hike, camp. Your body needs it, your mind needs it. We are not designed to be indoors under artificial light all the time. Tell stories, share experiences, pass down knowledge. That is how culture survives, how meaning is created. These are not revolutionary ideas, they are ancient practices, proven over thousands of years. We just forgot them, got distracted by shinies, new things. But the Ice Age travelers knew community, connection, contribution, competence. These are what make life meaningful, what make humans thrive. So here is my challenge to you. As you finish this video and go back to your modern life, take something from the Ice Age with you. Maybe it is a deeper appreciation for the cold, for fire, for warmth. Maybe it is gratitude for community, for the people in your life who would walk through a blizzard for you. Maybe it is courage, inspired by ancestors who crossed frozen continents with nothing but stone tools and determination. Or maybe it is just a reminder. You're tougher than you think, more adaptable, more capable, because you come from a long line of survivors. The Ice Age did not break humanity. It forged us, made us stronger, smarter, more connected, and that strength is still in you. Fight, now, waiting, ready to face whatever cold comes next. Because the world is still challenging, still unpredictable, still full of frozen landscapes and long journeys. But just like your ancestors, you can make fire, you can find your way, you can build shelter, you can survive, and more than survive, you can thrive, as long as you remember the most important lesson. You do not have to face the cold alone. We are in this together, just like we always have been. Thank you for taking this journey with me, for walking through 20,000 years of human history, for listening, for being curious, for caring about where we come from. If this resonated with you, subscribe to this channel. There are so many more stories to explore, so many more lessons from the past that apply to today. Leave a comment, tell me your thoughts, your reactions, what surprised you, what you disagree with. I read them all. And share this video with friends, family, anyone who needs a reminder that humans are capable of extraordinary things, that we have survived worse, that we will survive what is ahead, because at the end of the day, we are all Ice Age travelers, still moving, still adapting, still building fires in the dark, still hoping that over the next ridge we will find warmth, food and community. And as long as we keep moving together, we will. The journey continues. Stay warm out there.